Hey, everybody. We are starting our Hard Truths first 5 pages. Going to give it a couple minutes as everybody's coming in. And I'll give a warm welcome to our panelists today. We have Matt Misetich and Bri Janes and Michael Owens. So I'll start with Bri, introduce them. This is our staff at Pipeline, part of our fabulous staff at Pipeline. Bri Janes works as a development executive and contest coordinator with Script Pipeline, as well as a freelance story analyst. She started her screenwriting career at the age of 16 when she decided that being a business major in college required too much math. I concur. After school, she would ride the BART into Berkeley every week to take her first screenwriting classes from Terrell Seltzer of one fine day, and went on to graduate magna cum laude from Chapman University with dual degrees in screenwriting and television broadcast journalism. She is placed, I'm going to just pause for 1 second, because if you have not read Bri's articles on pipeline artists, you really have to go read them. They're fantastic. Yes, see that broadcast journalism really came in handy. She is placed as a finalist in Script Pipeline for the TV writing with her pilot Cartella and Screencraft pilot launch with Iconic, as well as a semifinalist in Slam Dance with her feature Hide Your Fires. Michael Owens is a screenwriter from Long Beach, California, and graduated from the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts with a degree in screenwriting. As a writer, Michael tends to pair a progressive worldview with character-driven stories, and he currently reviews screenplays and other creative materials for Pipeline Media Group as senior development executive. And Matt Misetich, in case y'all don't follow him on Twitter, he is our senior executive and partner at Pipeline Media Group and oversees all the divisions, including script, book, and film, as well as management of Pipeline artists. He began his tenure with Pipeline in 2006, working as a reader until early 2008, when he took over as manager. In that time, he's helped launch the careers of several Pipeline writers, including Evan Darty of Snow White and the Huntsman, Tripper Clancy of Stuber, Crosby, Solander, Bring Me Back, and others who have turned to Pipeline for guidance in their creative aspirations. It's estimated he's reviewed over 30,000 pitches, screenplays, pilots, books, and short films over the last 2 decades. So I cannot think, I know obviously everyone who works at Pipeline, but I could not think of a better group to discuss the topic of the first 5 pages. So I could think of a better group, but that's okay. Well, so we're here. We're the ones available.
These are the ones you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. But of course, everybody could chime in, but this is a great way to tackle it. So Matt, why don't you sort of lay the groundwork of how we're looking at the first 5 pages in this discussion?
Sure. Well, first, don't follow me on Twitter. I tweeted today about a cracker invasion on the United States. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. So do your favor.
Before you launch in there, I forgot to say, if you guys want to chat amongst yourselves in the chat box, that's awesome. We've got people from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Myrtle Beach, DC, Indiana, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Texas, Oakland. We've got people from all over. But if you have a question for these guys, because it is a town hall, so I'm going to be asking them all of your questions. So put those in the Q&A box, not in the chat box, if you could. That would be awesome. And the Q&A box is right down at the bottom. Just hit it. It'll pop up and you can type your question in. Okay, now, Matt, you can go.
Well, I just wanted to add that I know we named it the first 5 pages, but it's really more about the first impression that you get across as a writer through your script, right? So the first few pages, sure, but really about what's that initial impression that an industry person is going to get when they first start reading, because there's so much that can come across for better or worse in your opening. So yes, that's what we were touching upon today. And also, it's not, these town halls aren't terribly, perfectly structured where we talk about this and then we end after 17 minutes and then we talk about this. It's just like it's kind of like a mixer almost, where we're just in like 5 minutes we're going to be babbling on for an hour and we'll lose most of you. But yeah, I think we'll be able to cover a lot of interesting and productive topics under that first impression umbrella.
So first
That's it.
impression, obviously that title page, I know it may seem like people don't really pay a lot of attention to it, whatever. There's, you know, info on there, contact info, whatever, but can we start by talking about titles of scripts?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go. We can go chronological order. We'll just start with the title.
Well, yeah, that's the first impression you get. Like when you get the
Yeah.
PDF file, you see title.pdf. So
Yeah.
of course, that's gonna be the first impression we get, and sort of, yeah, it's the first view into the script and what you've kind of started constructing for us.
So I don't know if this is such an obscure, not obscure, but it's hard to give notes on like someone's title and why their title isn't good. But you know, so I'm going to try and skip that part, and we'll talk about, you know, what I see that goes on an actual title page. And it's going to seem really nitpicky, and I'm going to underscore that, and I'm going to keep saying that throughout the whole town hall. A lot of this seems a little because it is nitpicky. But there's certain things on the title page that kind of tend to point to amateur writing. And Bri and Michael may disagree with this, and Jeanne may disagree with this, but things like putting your WGA registration number, things like that, I don't think they're necessary at all. The other thing, putting what draft number it is, I think it's good that writers have that for their own records. You know, if it's draft 17 and what the draft date is, just leave it off your title page when you want to send it out. And also, I would even leave off like the registered, you know,
Copyright information.
Yeah, like that's kind of a given.
But yeah, if you've written the script, it's technically already copyrighted. Like that's sort of what they say. It just seems a little redundant, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. And I just read a great script today that had the WGA registration notation on there. It's not going to make or break you or anything. It's just kind
honestly,
of.
I don't care that much about title pages. It's just, you know, make it look like a title page, right? Title, your name unless it's a contest, in which case no name, but title, name, some contact information. That's basically all you need, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you want to get flashier, you can. Like you pick a fun font. I don't care. That's fun.
Yeah, Bri, you've done this too, or maybe you haven't actually. Maybe it was
I have.
On staff.
I've definitely done. I've done really artistic title pages before.
Yeah.
But it's like if you're gonna go that route, make sure you kind of got the skill to back it up. It's like, and if you're not like super into graphic design or you're not into art, it's like it's totally fine to just do a really basic title page with like maybe a fun font that like accents the theme of the piece. That's about all you'd really need.
Yeah, like if it's a comedy, then make sure it's not like this super gothic horror font or something like that. Just if you're going to do a fun font, make sure it's horror comedy, but if you're using a fun font, then make sure it's going to be at least the same tone, right?
Yeah.
And again,
sorry, I saw a question in the Q&A that might be good for the whole the whole group. It says the question is from Jeanne. Should the logline go at the bottom of the title page? What are your thoughts on that?
I have a strong opinion on that, and I think yes. I like it when the log line's at the front.
It's not standard, but yeah, I like it too because it just kind of primes you up for the read. Yeah, I think it's getting more popular. I've seen it more often than I did like even 5 years ago. But yeah, I do like it. It's nice just for expectations for me personally.
Right, especially if you're reading a ton of scripts in a given week or day. You know, it's you're not always going to have that pitch information attached to whatever script you're reading next, right? So
yeah, exactly. Like when I get a script that I'm supposed to read, I download it in my to read folder, and it sits on my iPad until I get a chance to read it. And I don't always have the time to go back and try and figure out which email came from where I actually found the script. So it's nice to have the logline right there when I start reading it 5 days later.
Yeah, and Amanda asked too, simple email address suitable, or should we include address and phone? I'd say just email address and phone probably.
Yeah, that's good. It's like phone's fine. I wouldn't include a physical address though, because it's not like we're sending physical scripts around as much as we used to. So it's like if you're going to keep it like contact info, email address and phone is fine.
Yeah, and, or the contact of your manager, reps, or something if that's what your deal is.
We're just laughing here because like I'm supposed to be moderating this and you guys are like reading the questions. It's like, okay, can you let me do my job?
No,
Sorry.
No, sorry, it's your job
My
now.
bad, Jeanne.
We're the captain now.
Like, or I'll just, go have a drink. Which you never know. I could be.
What's in here? I
What's
won't
in-
tell.
If it's liquid, it's a drink.
It's liquid. It's liquid. And also there's a lot of Black Reckless Creative mug envy going on in the Q&A, just saying. So somebody was asking, I'm currently writing a drama that has music in it, which we are actually going to address in a little bit. Do you have questions for writing lyrics? Can you give advice for the first act of a musical? My script is not really a full musical, but has musical sequences in it.
Well,
So I've actually written a
Michael's-
musical.
Yeah, I was going to say, Michael's
Yeah.
a good one to answer
You're
that.
the perfect one to answer this.
Yeah, so what I did was basically, in Final Draft, you can sort of change the margins of dialogue, so every song lyric gets its own line, and I sort of fudged the right margin so that every line kind of fit across the dialogue. But so what I'd say is basically, if for any genre really, you want to establish what genre you're writing pretty early on. So you do want to have, an opening musical sequence. I think just for first impressions, you do want to signal to the reader that this is going to be a musical. And it depends whether you're writing your own lyrics or if you're going to, find a friend who actually has more experience in that area. I did not, and that was kind of a real struggle because I'm basically going through every line. I'm on like rhymezone.com trying to figure out how to actually make all these different words rhyme. And it probably took me like, a week per song, which feels long when each one's only, like a page or two. So there's other ways you could do it. Like for La La Land, what they did was they basically just dropped in a brief description of what each song would feel like. And I think that also works, but in my opinion, I kind of just want to see something there, even if it's just like temp lyrics, it's just a temp song. I do think that there should be something there just to kind of give the feel of the song,
I can't remember the last time I'd read a musical script.
Yeah.
La La Land was the last musical I read. So aside from the ones for competition, but
So
like,
The script
yeah.
right.
Michael, when you write the song for the script, are you also writing, like, say, before you start writing the lyrics, are you writing like the tone of the song, like whether it's upbeat?
Yes.
Or all of
Yes.
that?
So like what I did for each one, I'd sort of format it where you'd put so the song would start and you'd have the song title in the middle of the page, bolded, just like as a little heading. And then right below that would be like, this is a fun, jaunty tune or whatever. And then just sort of set the emotions. And it's kind of fun for musicals because each song is its own scene. So when you have characters singing, they come into the scene with one state of mind, right? And you want them to go through some transformation, whether it's them trying to pick a course of action to take, or whether it's them, coming to their own conclusions on something. You want to find the emotion in the song, you want to find the character's journey in the song, and it's fun, but it's tough. It's just a different type of writing for me. It's fun.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. I had something to comment on that Bri had mentioned. But anyway, Jeannie, did you want us to go through, like all three of us made like little bullet points of things to touch upon, and we can filter those in?
Yeah. I just
then
want to
get
hit up
questions.
one question that somebody had asked early, and Bri had answered it in the Q&A box, and I'm not sure if we can see it, so I just want to read it. My pilot opens with an active crime scene that needs a bit of description, but is it a huge turnoff to have a couple of short paragraphs of descriptions at the very beginning?
No,
not at all.
My answer was basically just to keep it as concise as you can.
Right.
It's totally fine to have like a couple of paragraphs opening up. You definitely don't have to open with a line of dialogue or a transition or anything like that. It's for the reader. The important thing is to just kind of keep it moving. It's not something that you want like immediately to come into the script and then basically be stopped dead by a giant paragraph. You definitely don't want that.
And also you can do sort of clipped writing too. Like if it's an active crime scene, we've sort of all seen Law and Order, we've seen crime shows, so we kind of have an idea of what a crime scene looks like. So you could say, you know, you see the crime scene tape, the chalk outline of the body on the ground, just kind of keep it short and concise and just kind of bullet points.
Or highlight the unique aspects of that crime
Yes.
scene. Hey, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're at a crime scene, but like the murder weapon is like a lead pipe, like, you know, like Clue, but you know, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are 4 weapons on the table: a lead pipe, a rope, a revolver.
Yeah, the point is just highlight the uniqueness about your scene, right? Because like we all kind of know what a basic crime scene looks like.
Yeah. So let's go through some of your like bullet point things of, you know, what you want to see in the first few pages. We can start with the first page, like, you know.
While we're on the
first thing you
topic,
see is like the opening image, in my opinion. Like that's the first thing. The first thing when you open the script is, you know, title page, fade in or whatever, and then the opening image. And I think not enough writers really, Matt and I were having this conversation a few weeks ago, and not really enough writers are taking the opening image into account, I think. Like they'll just start the script.
For that matter, yeah.
Yeah, like fade in, interior kitchen, John, 31, sits across the table from his wife, Julie, 29, and then conversation starts. And, you know, maybe your first scene is a scene in the kitchen, maybe it is a breakfast scene, but I do want to see the visual. I want to see, you know, how is this a movie? How is this an actual visual story?
Like, and, so for example, like for Mike's example, so like say you have like a script with like a John and Julie in a kitchen, like it, like say it's a drama or it's like a murder mystery, and like the first shot could be of the knife block, and then you get the two sitting across from each other, and you kind of build that tension just from that opening shot. It's like, it's like it gives you an idea of what the script is going to focus on aside from just the room that they're in and the people that are there.
Yeah, exactly. You start with the knife block, one knife is conspicuously missing, and suddenly now you have tension in the scene.
It's like, it leaves a mystery. It automatically gets you hooked in.
Love how we go
murder. It was this quickest thing that came to my head.
Well, murder's great because it's tension, it's conflict, it's, you know, that's what you want in screenplays to begin with: conflict, tension, suspense, and murder has all of those. It's just
put a pin in
storytelling.
Talked about. Put a pin in what we just talked about too, because I want to drop I'll screen share or something. Drop a first page sample that we could analyze in a second. From, can I say whose script it's from?
Yes, you can say it's mine.
Okay, it's Bri's newest pilot, and it's really good. And I think I read it today, and I'm like, this is actually a great example of a good first page. So she has graciously allowed us to pick it apart, but only in good ways, because I have no notes on it. But what Michael's talking about is exactly what she did in that scene, and I thought it worked perfectly fine.
You know, can we also address character introductions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's like a big thing. Like agents usually for an actor will go right to that description immediately to see if they want to pass it on to their client. Like, so what are your tips and thoughts on character intros? Is that the one area where you feel like there's a little more wiggle room?
It's like there is and there isn't. I think like you really do need like a clear visual of what this character looks like. It's like, so you can't just say like, oh, Julie 29 pretty. It's like, okay, well, pretty can mean a whole lot of different things. It's like it has to be kind of like, say it's like, oh, Julie 29, she's radiant with an angular face or something like that. So it's like it gives you a little bit more description as to sort of what you're seeing.
That's actually one of my pet peeves when I read scripts, is people who describe their characters as pretty or handsome or whatever. Just because, you know, if you're sending a script into Hollywood, you want to get a Hollywood actor to play the role, right? And
they're all pretty.
Like, yeah, they're all pretty. Every actor in Hollywood is pretty, and
most everyone.
Like, pick the ugliest actor in Hollywood; they're more attractive than, you know, any regular person. But yeah, I just don't really like that. I don't really like to read characters good looking, because I just assume they probably already are. But at the same time, this is actually important to the story.
Yeah, it's hard to get character descriptions right sometimes, because I actually like it when someone gets a little bit cuter with it, but you kind of want to use that sparingly, right? You don't want to say, Jeremy, the 20s, a cross between this person and this person, and this person's a cross between this person and this person. You kind of want to mix it up, but sometimes it works really well. Again, when I go through Bri's example, she introduces her main character, I think.
Actually, no, I introduced the antagonist on the first page, I think, first.
Well, the main antagonist character. Anyway.
So yeah, I believe David's introduced.
And and a few quick little things in case this is kind of a beginner screenwriter thing, but in case you're not doing it, because I see really good screenwriters that still don't do it, and I guess it's fine. But like when you introduce a character, and it's like Christopher, blah 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 blah, walks in the room. There's a piece of action, and then the next line it talks about how old he is, and what yada yada. I like to put in to set the subjective thing. Put the age in parentheses next to the character, and just that's very simple. A simple way to do it, rather than like wait a second. I'm looking at it through the eyes of a reader too. When you're kind of, you're not poring over every single word and just reading it aloud and then rereading. It's got to go at a pretty good clip. So you want to get that information across as quickly as possible.
Why don't we use David's introduction as an example? I actually really like the introduction for David, and it's a really good example of what we're talking about.
I'm going to drop that sample right now.
Yeah, I think it's time to do it.
Why not? My other point too, please, for the love of all things, you have to tell us how old, generally speaking, your character is too. You can't just be like,
that's the first thing casting agents will look at is age.
Well, I was reading a script where basically I didn't know how the characters related at all for the first page because they didn't put in the ages. And so it turns out that it's a mom who's like 40-ish talking to her daughter who's like 6. And that's a very important dynamic because you're going to write a 6-year-old way different than a 12 or 20-year-old.
Right.
So it's very important to just give us an age range because we need to know who to picture in our heads.
I'm sometimes shocked at how often writers just leave it out. So anyway, let me share my screen.
It's like I will preface this sample. I break 2 major rules in this first page.
It does. You can see it now, right?
In the first paragraphs.
Yep, in the first paragraphs, I break 2 rules.
Okay. Well, when I go through it, anything you guys want to add, sprinkle it in. But let me do just a quick kind of rundown with what popped out to me. And you can see the screen, of course, right? There's no weird technical error where like crazy websites are coming up. And okay. So I'm a little biased too sometimes because I really like scripts that open with like an over black sort of like sound or a visual or something that just kind of leads us into the script. It's not necessarily required, but I think most writers, if you take a quick look at the scene for a second, okay, the first real scene is inside the seminar hall. I think most writers, this wouldn't exist. I'm pointing at something. This wouldn't exist. Can you see my cursor too?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
You can, right? Okay, good.
Little hand.
I rarely share my screen. It's a big privilege for all of you. So most writers wouldn't put any of this here. They would start either fade in or just start right away with interior seminar hall. And it's kind of, I don't want to say boring, but it is kind of boring. And it doesn't allow us to kind of like enter the world of the script right away.
Yeah, I do like to be eased in. I like the theater has the big curtains rise moment. And I do like to have a sort of similar thing in a script like Bri has here where it starts black and then we get to the river and then we flash of white and then now we're in the seminar hall. It's very visually pleasing, just imagining this.
Yeah, and my only note for you is like maybe over black can be less justified, but it doesn't matter.
I liked it in the center. That was again, I break. What can I say?
Right. And the first line is close your eyes, listen, which immediately it gets our attention, right? Just through the dialogue. She has a music cue. Everyone's going to tell you don't put music in your script because you don't have the rights, and they grumble on. It's a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't matter. Like just don't overload it with like music in every scene.
Like if you're writing a Beatles documentary or Beatles movie, then that's kind of that. Then you might have a legitimate complaint there that you don't have the rights to that music. But The Philip Glass song,
That's
that's
the only
fine.
music cue in the script is the very first one. That's it.
And that's fine.
And look, I'm as familiar with Philip Glass as I am. I'm not familiar even with that particular song, but I know what a Philip Glass score looks like, or sounds like. I've seen Cleon-Scotsy, right? So I've already got the tone, and I'm already kind of into the script after, I mean, literally 3 lines, right? So then she comes in with the sound cue, rush of a mighty river. There's 2 long breaths. It's already building a little bit of tension, and then he comes in talking about the Buddha and this, and it feels very tranquil and serene. And then it wipes out, and all of a sudden we're in this. I kind of, when I read it, I sort of assumed this very Spartan-looking backdrop, right?
Yeah, pretty
so
much.
she's already playing with this like yin and yang of imagery that, to me, again, as a reader, it just works well. I'm watching a movie now, right? In this case, a TV show. So she's not doing anything fancy here either, right? It's all very simple, but it gets across the mood super efficiently, I think. And then she
The mood, the tone, everything. It's really nice.
The chiseled man in silhouette speaks into a head mic atop a large black stage on student audience. The world seems less colorful, less defined. I'm already kind of seeing it's a surreal sort of like uncomfortable atmosphere, right? Which is going to match the theme of which is going to match the theme of the series as a whole too. He goes on, actually, like that voiceover. And then she gets into the intro. This is Dr. David Haven, 50. Tony Robbins meets Patrick Bateman. I understand the entire, that's why I say, like, I kind of like it when writers do that, just don't overuse it. In fact, I don't think you use that sort of a character intro at all for the rest of the script, right?
Nope.
Yeah,
that was
it's just because this is the character that we really do need to picture too.
Yeah.
I think.
It's like it also kind of gives you a sense of who the guy is. He is Tony Robbins meets Patrick Bateman. He is kind of this sort of wealthy lifestyle guru with a very sort of a dead-eyed sociopathic sort of deal. So
Yeah. So as a reader who reads many scripts a year, I read this first page and I'm already into it. You've already checked off all these boxes, and look how economical she is with her writing, where she stuffs all this information about the script, about her voice, about her writing style into a single page, right? Then that's all you need to do. The rest of the script doesn't matter. No, it does. But,
well, I mean, the page 1 is, one of the support pages just because it is our first impression. This is, mastering its computer screen. Everyone reads scripts now on either computers or tablets or even phones. So basically you're competing for our attention. Like if I have a first page that I'm reading and I'm not really into it, I'm going to the internet, I'm going to Twitter, my mind's going to wander and I'm going to go somewhere else for a little bit until I have to go back and actually read the script. So you are competing for our attention whenever we get the first page.
We've got, I'm sorry, Matt.
No, real quick, and I'll stop sharing the screen. Bri, did you want anything else to add that you were trying to do with the first page?
I mean, no, you pretty much got it all in there. I mean, that's pretty much what I was going for. So mission accomplished, I guess.
Right. I am now officially attached as a producer on the script. That's the deal. That's how Hollywood works.
You get 50% of all future
You did
profits.
give me plenty of notes on it. Don't worry, guys. It's not all positive.
50% of all gross profits. Okay. Go back, hit back the Q&A.
Yes, we've got some questions that are coming in. I'm coming from a fiction and short story writing background, and I'm still getting used to the screen format. When it comes to description, I've been told to keep it concise. I try to, however, I'm having a hard time balancing what I think is my unique voice versus being too descriptive. How can I strike a better balance? Yeah.
Bri, you want to take that one, or Michael? You know.
Well,
I think one thing you can definitely do is basically just write the script. First, just write the script and write everything you think needs to be in the script. And then after that, just start saying it to friends, have readers who you can send it to, and basically just say, is there any information in the script that you don't think is necessary, or you didn't need to know this information, didn't really add to the script, I think. But it's always the question of how much do you need in there, and I think the best way to do it is sort of just to step away from the script and have other people look at it at some point.
It's like that, and if you do tend to write with like with more flourish and whatnot, just make sure you break up your paragraphs. It's like, you don't necessarily need to be as like economical in my writing as I am. It's like, you can definitely be like there are a couple of writers who I love that are very flashy with their descriptions, that really give like a deep feel, atmosphere to the scene. It's just, as long as you're breaking up the text, just to make it a little easier, a little more visual on the page, you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one rule of thumb that I have basically is that every paragraph is its own either idea or shot, really.
Yeah.
If I think that it'll be, if when this is filmed, there will be a change in the camera, then I basically put into a new paragraph. Or if it's a completely new thought, then I'll put in a new paragraph, personally. We just don't really want to see, as Bri said, the very long paragraph where you have 90 pieces of information that are all different shots.
Yeah.
Right.
So Colin's asking about TV pilots. Do you prefer to see the actual act breaks in the script?
Mm-hmm.
I do. It's like, I personally like it, but it's like, you don't absolutely have to. It's not like a hard and fast rule, but for especially for TV, you kind of want to know what your act ins and acts outs are, especially if you're pitching to network, even more than cable. It's because you'll have to kind of budget for those commercial breaks and kind of know like where the cliffhangers are going to be. Like, oh, it's like we're going to cut away to commercial on like, oh my God, we just found out who the killer is or whatever, you know.
I'd also say trust your gut, because I just wrote a pilot a little bit ago, and it definitely had a streamer feel. It would only be made on a streamer, and it just, the flow of the story didn't really have any place for act breaks. It just kind of felt natural that it would progress from scene to scene, just kind of uninterrupted. And so I just kind of didn't put in act breaks because it just didn't really feel right. So I guess my answer depends.
If Magda was here, Magda, one of our execs, who's been with us for 10 years, would probably say you don't need them for an hour long. I don't think. Although maybe she would. I'm putting words in her mouth. She's not here, so whatever. I don't think you necessarily need them, but there's other. It depends on where you're writing for, and at least with the writers that we're reviewing, it typically, it obviously doesn't matter as far as our consideration.
Well, that's a good point, though.
But it does change from
No, definitely know what you're writing for. Like kind of know like that's just a good thing for any script to have. It's like you kind of want to know like sort of where you're targeting for. So like if you're making like a half-hour comedy, is it like Nickelodeon, like kids, or is it Adult Swim? Or if you're doing a drama, is it like a procedural on a network, or is it like a Netflix show? It's like, because you're going to be writing very differently depending on where you're targeting and where you want to put your show at.
Well, there is one comment in the chat right now. We all just want to know if we need them for the pipeline contest we're all going to win this year. And, you don't need them. You don't. No, I don't think I've ever passed on a script because they didn't have act breaks in there. That's a very petty reason.
Never. That's never been a thing. It's like, I think we've definitely had finalists without act breaks. We definitely have.
Most don't have. I don't even remember the last hour long we've read that had defined act breaks. That's why I was kind of jarred when I read yours today, because I'm like, oh, an act break.
I like act breaks. That's just a me thing. So it's like that's a person. I guess it's a personal preference thing, really. Yeah. Whatever helps you.
But also in the chat, outside of the Q&A, in the chat, somebody had said, I'm sure it was present in a previous script pipeline webinar where it was advised by the speaker to cut down on the we and minimize parentheticals. We are confused.
Minimize it, but that doesn't mean you have to cut them out entirely. Just
don't overdo it. If every sentence is starting with we, then it's not strong. Right. Or if every line of dialogue has a parenthetical attached to it, then it's not strong. Just like we said with Bri, she is varying her character intros. You also want to vary your sentences. You want to vary, just how you're putting information into the script. So you do want to put we in there occasionally if that's your style. Just don't overuse it.
Yeah.
When you start reading dialogue for a new character, do you read it in the voice of an actor or someone you know right away? I always wonder, because that's how I read. Like, do you have it, or just like
for me it's just
my internal monologue.
Character. It's like that's how I read my dialogue. It's like, okay, is the character speaking to me? What does the character sound like, rather than like what actor it might be,
from a reader's perspective, that's interesting, because I almost create actors in your head almost. Unless
visually,
it's a script where you're like, unless it's a script where like your first impression is like, oh, this is perfect for like Jeanne Smart, and then all of a sudden you're reading the script as if Jeanne Smart is playing that role, or whoever.
No different than when you pick up a book.
It's no different.
Yeah.
It goes back to the like with Bri's intro where it's Tony Robbins meets Patrick Bateman. Like I have this like, you know, hybrid character now in my head where it's like that person, but it's like a, you know, it's just whatever that voice is. It's an interesting philosophical question. Who you picture when you're reading a story that, you know, has no visual reference attached to it. Anyhow.
Can you start a script with your main character in a voiceover, a short visual into a memory?
I mean, that's basically what I did. that's exactly what I did
before the page came up.
Well, I mean, I think that the question is, can I do something? The answer is usually yes. It's just, you know, will it work is really the only variable there. But if you want to do something, I say just do it and try it out and see if it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't somebody have a tweet that got roasted for it about never starting your scripts? Maybe it wasn't a tweet. I don't know. Twitter and reality for me is merged. It was something about never starting a script with a flashback. And like, my argument is like, isn't the whole script technically a flashback because you wrote it? So anyway, it was kind of a dumb suggestion. You can start the script however you want, as long as it's cool and engaging, regardless of the genre. Is my answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
If it works, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to take a question that I think it can be, you know, a complicated question. Please cover race in description, because you've got that thing where you want the casting director to do their job. But is it more like, if it's important to the story, then mention it? If it's not, don't mention it. But should you mention it? Should you not mention it? All of that. I'd
say however you view the script, mention it. Like, you know, if you do think your main character is Black, mention that, please, because otherwise they will not cast that actress in that role. So I think, yes, definitely mention it. I will do a caveat. If all of your characters in the script are white, I wouldn't really mention it, because it's just kind of jarring to read a script. I've read scripts like this where every character is white, and just reading it just feels weird.
They mentioned that they're white in the description?
Yeah, every character, they mentioned the character was white.
It
was just weird.
My very strong opinion on this, I guess, is that you shouldn't mention it at all unless it's conducive or it's needed for the plot, right? Unless it's implied too, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're writing.
I know for David's character introduction, the fact that he's white is strongly implied by, it's like Tony Robbins meet Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
Those guys are. So it's it implies what the race is.
Yeah, if you're writing a script in 18th century, you know, England, and it's amongst the nobles and the elite or something. I don't know anything about 18th century England clearly, but it's going to be inferred that, you know.
I actually do. You want to know about it?
we can talk about the ethnic backgrounds of 18th
We'll have
century.
a little history lesson. And Colin's here. He's really into history too, so we can go on a totally different tangent.
But so we did get a comment there. How do we mention it in the script? What I do is kind of just like, so, you know, you do the character name, parentheses, age, and I just do comma, you know, whatever the race is, then end parentheses. That's sort of how I do it. It just quick mention.
Yeah. That's how the protagonist of that same script that we were reviewing is introduced. It's 35 Latina. So that's
right.
The protagonist of that script is Dr. Marisol Marquez. So it's
right. But it's conducive.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, names could imply race too.
Right. Well, yeah, it could.
Yeah.
Right. I guess theoretically, it's all a very awkward line to walk, I guess, when you're writing a script, because like, you know, when it's necessary and when it isn't necessary, I guess. But
I'd say if you picture the character a certain way, just mention it, because otherwise, you know, you might not be able to have that later on if it gets optioned, purchased, and all that.
That's interesting too. Yeah, how they picture it when they first read it, and they'll just run with it. You know.
Yeah.
You can Trojan horse a diverse cast in there that way, and just say, "No, sorry, that's how I wrote the story." So.
Yeah.
I know there's a ton of questions, but.
Yeah, Jeanne says, so my description of a youthful Adonis work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that would work. It's like, that gives me an immediate image as to what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. That's how I'm going to describe you, Michael.
Oh, thank you. Can I change my name on here?
Youthful
Adonis.
The youthful Adonis. I'll have to come up with like descriptors for all of you instead of reading bios. That actually might be way more fun.
Just 3 words. Greco-Roman, and people are like, what does that mean? You just move on. No one will know.
Is it a good idea to go back to previous scripts? In the past few weeks, I've rejigged a pilot that I last looked at in August of 21. The previous script was unsuccessful in competition, etc., but I've done a rewrite anyway. Is it advisable to resubmit to new competitions, or will people be turned off having recognized the title from previous years?
You could change the title.
I was
Chance
gonna
to get
say,
past
just,
the
they
readers.
won't
Like,
remember it
change the
anyway.
title, we won't know.
But
That's
even
an
so,
old.
well, like my personal opinion on this is like, if you're going to resubmit something, make sure your rewrite is substantial. Like, don't just resubmit it if like, oh, you changed a couple of scenes deep in Act 2, or oh, you just kind of, you did a little dialogue pass or whatnot. Like, if you're going to resubmit it, like make sure it's a proper big rewrite. So like we can actually see that like it's changed and gotten better and grown and all that other kind of stuff. Because most of the time we won't remember, but if we do, it's kind of cool to see, oh, this is cool how this kind of grew that we saw from last year. It's like, you never know.
This one script I loved, like I read it, a few weeks ago, and it's just the perfect script. I had read it before back in like August or July of last year, and it was good. It just wasn't great, but the writer took the script, rewrote it, and basically is like reading a whole new script. It was just great.
Oh no, I know. Never mind.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So the power of a good rewrite,
It's hard to like with that with comedy.
It was a comedy half-hour pilot.
Yeah, to rewrite it in such a way where like you make that big of a 180. But anyway, good for her. I'm glad she did.
Yeah, got a question about caps. I've seen this done different ways and can't see a trend. When are phrases typed in all caps in an action sequence? I've seen scripts without any action descriptions in all caps, scripts with only important action in all caps, and scripts with tons of action description in all caps. Trivial question, I know, but it's the little things.
No, that's a.
Well, I think there are some things that need to be all caps. Like some things need to be all caps. Like the first time you introduce a character, that's all caps. Important props. But for me, I'm writing a script right now that has a lot of action sequences, and more or less it's whenever I want to. I just cap things whenever I want to.
Yeah,
it's just sort of personal style.
Yeah, it really is down to personal style. I'd err on the side of less all caps than more all caps, because then if everything is in all caps, then you won't be able to accent things as well.
Yeah, the great thing about screenwriting software is that you also have italics and bold and underline. So between all those things, I think you can vary between all caps and other ways to highlight words, but it really just comes down to personal style.
I wish I could drop an example of like what not to do when you go really overboard with the caps and the italics and the bolds, because then you open the script and you see that first page and it's just a mess and you're like, I don't want to read this, right? It's just from a visceral level, or just from the visual of it all. So again, I know I'm saying the same thing, but it's like you have to find that balance between too much and not enough or whatever, right? So I'd like Bri said, I would err on the side of not overdoing it on all caps. Like when I was in film school, it's like, all right, every sound should be in all caps, and I'm like, no, don't do that.
Or you read screenwriting articles from like 20, 25 years ago and says, you put sound effects, a separate line, SFX : that's very outdated at this point.
Right. From 25 years ago, sure, but not now.
Right. And this, I was going to mention this at the end, and I've mentioned this every town hall that I've been on. Everyone has to read as many scripts as they possibly can. Produce scripts and scripts from your peers, and
with a critical eye.
With a critical eye, and also take note of how those scripts are written, and the ones that you like, they probably have a style that is not only legible, but that has a certain flow to it. Maybe you can glean stuff off there. I would even recommend reading anywhere from 5 to 10 scripts a week. I know that sounds like a lot, because it is a lot. But you're all film and TV writers. It's not like reading a book. And if you were trying to get a book published, I would say read at least 2 books a month anyway. But you have to track down as many scripts as you can. There's millions of scripts on the internet. Just keep digesting, and even if it's read the first 2 pages of like 20 scripts in a week, it'll help after a while once you get like the pacing of that intro. Maybe not the first 2 pages, first 10 or 15. one quick caveat too that I was also going to mention at the end. Might as well mention it now. Michael always sends me the script because it's not very good, but it got produced, and writers would look at it and be like, "Well, this script got produced, so therefore I can copy that style." And I won't name what script it is, but it was Trainwreck by Amy Schumer. You can go and look at it on the internet. Okay, it's not the best written script, of all time. Is it fair that it got produced and that it got noticed because the writing was so clunky? Yes, because Amy Schumer spent years building a career and becoming a great comic and a great actress, and that's why it got made. So you want to be careful of what types of scripts you're emulating too. Just because something got made doesn't mean that you should copy that.
The writing
style.
itself is great. Yeah.
Yeah, and that style is going to be accepted by industry people that you're sending it to.
You have the Coen brothers who write every script in Times New Roman, and
oh, do they?
we've just come to I think it's something like that. Yeah, and so we've just come to expect every script to be written in Courier now.
Right. Or Quentin Tarantino scripts are just a disaster, but the films are magnificent, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you have to kind of learn who to emulate. That's why I always tell writers, if you can get your hands on them, read the scripts from writers who's just sold a spec, who just got management, who just were
the great one is
perhaps
The Matrix. Matrix is a great because I think Lana and Lily Wachowski had only made one movie before that, and it's kind of like a trial run for The Matrix. And the Matrix script is just brilliant if you actually take the time to read it. The original Matrix from 1999. I saw that in the comments.
Yeah, there's going to be gems and stuff from the past too, but as much recent stuff as you can.
Recent stuff, but
yeah.
Anything, just read.
Right. And if you're reading a script that was written by Quentin, who's directing it, it's different because they can put all this other stuff in there, like the Avatar script and all that stuff, because they're also going to direct it. So it's totally different.
It's been a while since I read it, but Inglourious Basterds actually has a great description for the Brad Pitt character, where he just includes all the stuff that you would never see in the movie, but it actually works on the page. Like he says, Brad Pitt has a scar around his neck. It's he survived a noosing or something like that, and it will be never mentioned in the movie, but it kind of just works in the context of the script because it adds character, it adds flair. So I guess my point of view for most of this is if it works, it works.
Yeah. Someone is asking Bri if you are.
I was literally about to answer that, typing it in. Yes,
you're also a director, and is it okay for novice screenwriters to put director/camera moments in a screenplay?
It's like, well, first of all, I'm not a director, but it's like when I do, what I would say for that is you can direct without using like camera terminology. Like say, it's like for when we're looking at David in the example that we were using earlier, it's like, we didn't use, we circular dolly around David. It's we rotate around David. Or it's like we're watching or we're listening, or like you can direct with your description. You don't need to like use extreme close-up or like VFX shot or anything like that. Like actually don't include.
You'd say like grips the mug tightly.
Yes.
It's assumed that it's gonna be a close-up on the mug and me gripping the mug tightly. But I will say that Bri mentioned extreme close-up, and that sort of writing has also kind of gone out of style. Just calling out the shots that specifically like medium shot, medium long shot, all that's out of style now. But once I do use I do use stuff like pull out, close on, tight on.
Close on are fine. Yeah.
Yeah, like I do use camera movements, but I tend to be a little bit more general about it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Is the dialogue about change related to the theme of the plot or series? I've been told to make sure the theme is obvious early in the pilot.
I'm assuming you're talking about the example page, and yes, it is. Change is huge in terms of the main theme of the pilot. So it's like, I'm glad you picked up on it, which is good.
Good job, Bri.
How do you prefer to do time differences in scripts? Example being an event that takes place years in the past. Would it be formatted in the scene heading like Interior Arcade Day 3 years ago?
I think it depends on how you're doing it in the rest of the script. If it's a one-off, then I'd probably call that a flashback, and then put like in the actual body of the description, like super 3 years earlier or something like that. But if you're cutting between multiple timelines, then I think how you had it is probably fine. It just depends on the context of the script, I think.
And Matt, you left a comment to Ramona, but you just directed it to us. So click on everybody.
I was telling Ramona, this isn't a pipeline artist shirt, but I have one that's just like it, but it has like the pipeline artist on the front. Now available on the Pipeline Artist store. Shop today.
I should have worn my sweatshirt because it's really, really cozy, I have to say.
Right.
Lately, Netflix has had a few dramas and dramedies that are more drama than comedy that run the same length as a comedy. Would a drama script that is 40 pages or under be passed on?
Not automatically.
No, it wouldn't.
Not automatically. It's like, because there are half-hour dramas. They do exist. It's just not very many of them. And typically it's like, I know hour-long comedies are actually becoming more popular, like dramedy comedy kind of stuff. So it's like, it's not necessarily in terms of page length.
I might be outdated on this, but unless it's animation, 45 pages, that's kind of like a dead zone, I feel like.
I don't know, because I know
a
lot of networks are asking for their hour-long to be between like 44 and 50 pages, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like I was looking at Teen Wolf scripts a while ago, and all of those were hitting like 45, 46 pages. Like,
well, for commercial, yeah. Well, if it's Teen Wolf, then that would be network. So that would be for commercial. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just know if I sent a 45-page pilot out to, a manager or something, they would be like, oh, it's 45 pages. They would kind of question it, I think. So I don't know if you should just err on the side of sticking into those traditional zones or not. I would say yes, but that's,
I don't know, because then you have stuff like Gilmore Girls where every script was 89 pages or however long each script was. So it's
and I think that goes back to the example of like why you should read scripts that are just getting picked up or that just got somebody wrapped or an agent or something, because there's kind of a gap between what's being produced and what those scripts look like and stuff that hasn't. So
I just want to circle back to the race question because there's a comment in the Q&A and I also saw it in the chat, so I'm sure everybody saw it, but I just want to acknowledge it and read it. It is important in this time where we are working hard to move away from whiteness as the assumed norm, that we are explicitly intentional about ensuring diversity in our casting by clearly writing that into our screenplays. We cannot assume that casting directors and executives will act on the value of ensuring a diverse cast because historically they have not, and that is the problem. The writer has tremendous power in this sense by explicitly articulating that diverse characters are included. Thank you for
absolutely, yes. That's
I don't want to get down, but they actually still don't. I mean, if someone really likes your script, they're still going to cast it however they're going to cast it. But if you're writing a story and the story itself is diverse, then you paint them into a corner. They have to cast it that way, right? So one of my sort of peeves too, I guess, is when I'm reading a script and it really doesn't matter to the plot or anything what ethnicity that character is, and they're adding it everywhere just for the sake of saying, oh, my script's diverse now. And that's not, to me, that's not how diversity really works necessarily, at least in script form, right? You should be touching upon themes and narrative components and character backstories and commentary and all that, and that should all be built in, and therefore your cast is going to be diverse. In which case, though, yes, add note that Jeremy is this and whoever is that, I can't think of character names now all of a sudden. Jeremy and Ellen and Fran, I don't know. But I don't know. I lean on usually advising writers, make it a central part of your story rather than just plugging stuff in just for the sake of character descriptions,
It's kind of like when you have that like John and Jane Wick thing where it's like, oh, they rewrite the character for a woman, they just change the name, and then and then it's like then it's not authentic anymore. So it's like if you're just
it's insulting almost.
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways. So it's like, because race is a core part of identity. So it's like it's kind of important to be conscientious of that.
Right.
Another question for Bri. How do you go about developing? Don't feel bad, Adonis. You will get some questions for the young Adonis too, I'm sure. How do you go about developing your initial ideas? Do you think about them a lot first or immediately start writing?
Oh, well, for me, I really spend a ton of time in the development and outline phase, because outlining is honestly what takes me the most time. Because when you fix stuff in the outline early on, that means you don't have to do a ton of drafts to kind of get it where it needs to go, because you're sorting out all the plot issues and character arcs in the outline stage. So it's like I prefer spending more time in development than I even do writing, actually. It's like I'll end up usually writing the draft of the pilot within like a week or two once I've really been doing outline for a few months. So that's my process anyway. Everyone's different.
I'm a big outlining fan too. And I also feel like when you do that first draft, those first 5 pages aren't necessarily going to be your first 5 pages. A lot of times people start like too early, or they find another section that they want to pull forward and, you know, bookend it or start like that. I like the whole plotting, outlining, planning. I'm a planner. I like that.
I know we veered off the first intro of the script a bit, but
yeah, we can go back.
But he's Vaughn has a good question. I think should not to steal your your moderator duties.
Fine.
Here's the problem. I'm more comfortable as a moderator, and you're more comfortable as a moderator, so you can't have me on as a panelist. I just have to pick one and just go with it. So we should switch it up one time.
Fine. Should one specify the location of the title sequence?
I was supposed to say it anyway.
See, I beat you to it. We're also competitive Italians. So.
Yeah, this is a very Italian American chat right now.
Right.
I'm the only non-Italian here.
Yep.
What?
Sorry, Bri.
Should one specify the location of the title sequence? Was it? I lost it.
Yeah.
Wait, like the title sequence, as in the title sequence, like when you have a TV show and you've got the title sequence, or do you mean like?
Well, movies do too, but TV shows kind of have a natural place for them because you know you have the teaser and then end teaser at at the very end. So that's kind of a natural place where we'd assume the title sequence would go. I think.
Yeah, I don't think you would really
for
add
TV.
Yeah, it would be if you're writing TV, your cold open is it's title sequence. You don't have to put title sequence after that. In other words.
Yeah, you don't have to, but it's like you can if you want. It's not gonna count
against you at all. Yeah.
If you
And then sometimes features do too, and kind of, I don't know. I'm writing one right now where basically there's a lot of visual stuff going on, and like, okay, that'd be a good place for a title sequence, but I didn't mention it. I don't think in the script. I usually just kind of leave that out when I'm writing, at least.
Also, Liz has a really good question that's very complicated, and a great question too. So I don't know if we want to break first.
Well, wait. Why don't we do Jeanne's other question and then we can break.
And then we'll save Liz's for the first one coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
My script is set in 19th century Jamaica, and I use English and Native as descriptors rather than white and Negro. Should I include both white, English, or Negro Native?
Well, what I would say there is to do like if the characters would say like white or Negro, but the action
dialogue,
the dialogue would say something because that's true to the time period. The action lines, though, you're writing for a modern audience, so yeah, you would use English, Native, white, Black, you know, like definitely like the more like language like Negro would be something that the characters would say, rather than something you as the writer would say necessarily.
So we're just about 8 o'clock. So we're going to take like a 5-minute break. Well, 5-minute break. Exactly, 5-minute break. And
take 5.
Take 5. Oh God, those candy bars are really good. Okay, anyway. So we'll take 5 and we'll be back. So we'll be back. Mute yourself, kids.
And I promise I won't be trying to moderate again. anyone has questions while I'm here, I'm happy to answer. Just type it in the chat box. Not the Q&A, just the chat box. Hi, Coral. It's been so long since we last Zoomed. Let's see. Ensemble pilot, about half of them.
Are you coming back early?
Yes, I'm helping the people as much as I can. I would leave them to answer Megan's question. Yeah, just leave them unspecified. It's
Okay,
no big
maybe
deal.
other people would like, maybe they're not here. Maybe they're going to the bathroom. Maybe some of our
I'll readdress them. This is bonus time, Jeannie.
bonus time. Just make sure you address it again. See,
But
I
some of
can't
them are.
control him. See, this is what it's like. The behind the
No, see,
scenes of Pipeline.
Carl's just messing around anyway. No one wants.
I
No one
was
wants
upstairs
to
and
hear the answers.
I heard voices, and I'm like, it has to be Matt.
I can't stop. I can't help myself with the moderation duties.
He's like a workaholic, and says the other workaholic.
Well, Megan was nice enough to put them back in the Q&A. See, she's on top of things.
She's awesome.
She can be our new Symposium coordinator. There's too many questions now. I can't answer them all. Jeanne, are there any other things you hate seeing in scripts? Yes.
Who's moderating Pipeline
Yes, sure.
writers right now? Colin asks.
I don't know. The writers took control in March of 2020 at this point. I just pop in and give away mugs sometimes. It's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's like a Wild West over there. Which is good.
We should touch upon what I can't find the question now. The other things we hate seeing in scripts. Hate is such a strong word. There's things that I don't particularly, care for in terms of style and stuff, but it tends to be pretty subjective. I think the things that we touched upon so far are things that like, including the age of your character, like kind of obvious things that mistakes you won't make if you read enough scripts, basically. So.
You're not allowed to answer anything in the Q&A.
Okay, I'm sorry, you guys.
You could just chat with me, or you could have kept your camera off for 5 minutes.
Whatever, I had nothing else to do. It's like I would just answer emails and, in the 5-minute break. And Katie says that Pipeline Authors is still under control. It is, because
Yes.
I'm not running it anymore. It's Jeannie and Peter and Erica and
Yeah, and
Chantal.
y'all should come to Pipeline Authors. It's Thursday nights, 5 to 7 Pacific time, because it's a smaller, more contained group. There are not just novelists there. There's novelists and a lot of them do also write screenplays and are novelists too. So you should come there because it's fun. Peter,
Seconded.
if you haven't met Peter yet, he is the GIF master. He's really good at it.
The gift master?
GIF.
Oh,
GIF?
gift master.
Yeah.
Peter's the master of gifts?
Yes. Oh my God. He is on the GIF. He's got a good GIF game.
Oh, see?
He does.
And he says he's an old man, but I disagree.
Yep. Pipeline Authors is Thursday nights and Pipeline Writers is Friday nights.
Hi, I'm back.
Hey, Matt couldn't stay away. Just
Yeah, I
so
was
you know.
listening. I was listening. I said, no, my camera's staying off for 5 minutes because that was the deal.
Because you follow the rules.
I follow the rules.
The rules of the first 5 pages. He can't even do 5 minutes.
Just to note too, where's the comment now? Nandumiso, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Just about describing the race of the character in the script. Look, I mean, I'm pro the writer should do whatever they want in terms of what they want to put in their script. And if you're writing a story where ethnicity really doesn't matter. I put whatever you want in there. The only thing I don't like is when it's clear that the writer is forcing it in there just for the sake of forcing it in there. And that's, I don't know, I tend not to like to see that. If you're gonna note the race or the gender or the anything, the sexuality, whatever of the character, it feels like it has to be there for, at least a general reason, I would think. Otherwise, leave it up to whoever's, picks it up.
I mean, to be fair though, because I want to is a valid reason if you're the writer.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So whatever.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not gonna make or break you if you add it or you don't add it, right? If you say a character is non-binary, you're not going to read the rest of the script thinking like, well, how does this relate to the plot? Like they're non-binary, just that's it, right?
Well, I think actually Harold and Kumar is a great example because those characters could have been any race in the first movie, and
right.
They kind of integrated the plot pretty well. But it's a stoner comedy that, that's not really that's not their first character traits in the movie at all by any means.
Yeah. We can think of 100 examples too, where it's a diverse cast that you could have casted it any way you wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes I put too much trust in what happens to a script after it goes through the development process, after it gets to a rep and to a production company. And my mindset probably doesn't always match with their mindset that they're going to, put something through that is a little different than what we've seen, shall we say.
One recent movie I thought that did it pretty well is Eternals, because basically the idea is that all the superheroes in that movie are gods from different cultures. So it really did make sense to have this incredibly diverse cast, in my opinion. So, again, you're the writer, so if you want to do it, then just do it.
Yeah. And what Coral said, he's got a good point, actually. In the chat, if you'd like to read it. I wouldn't specify our characters as white either, frankly, for that matter. Unless it's pertinent to the plot.
I think that it was addressed in the chat, and it is kind of a problem where every character, or a lot of readers, they do kind of default to white when they're reading a script, and that's kind of just there's reality though.
There's a good question to unpack. What's your default? I'm not answering the question, I guess, but like, what is your default when you're picturing a character? Talk about, what your internal biases are when you're reading a script.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. That's a different town hall I'd love to address.
That's a different town hall. That's a very compelling article that someone can write for Pipeline Artists at some point.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah. We're not necessarily the
I'm messaging you after this.
That entire town hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are back from our break, and Matt is no longer allowed to hold the moderator wand. Okay, so Liz has a great question that we said we would get back to at the top of the hour. So can you talk about what needs to be accomplished in the first 5 pages from a reader standpoint in terms of character, plot, theme, etc.?
Every script is different, so every script will have different requirements for the opening scene. But I do think that we do want to get a sense of, first of all, the genre, like what kind of world are we inhabiting? Is this going to be like a thriller? Is this going to be a comedy? If it's a thriller, you want some kind of thrilling sequence. If it's a comedy, you want something light and airy, perhaps. Sci-fi, you want to see the lightsaber in the first 5 minutes, right? You kind of just want to get the genre touch points in there if it's right for the script. But one thing I like doing for features especially is I like to have a like kind of a teaser like you would for a pilot, where I just tell kind of a short story in the first 5 pages where a character has one specific goal, they try to achieve it, and they either fail or they don't. And I try to have that little short segment in the first part of the script just kind of comment either on the theme or the genre or the character or whatever.
I think the most important thing, honestly, that you need to accomplish in the first 5 pages is make the reader feel like you're in good hands. Essentially, and one way to do that, at least that I found almost pretty much universally across the scripts that we advance, the writing looks good on the page, because filmmaking is a visual medium. And if your writing doesn't look visually appealing on the page, the reader is going to automatically assume that you're not paying attention as much to the visuals on the screen if you're not paying attention to what's on the page. So that's a big thing for me anyway.
Yeah, let me that's such a loaded question too. I mean, there's a million different ways to answer it. I could write a book about it alone, but I'll give you one snippet of an example of how to kind of draw your reader in through, we've been talking about like format and little things like that, but how to draw a reader in with your voice and your writing style, which is just as important, right? And this was years and years ago. I read a script. Writing was okay. The first 3, 4, 5 pages was this girl, and she's walking through the forest, and she's like, she finds some mushrooms, and then she's like and then she goes and she finds like a deer, and she watches the deer, and she goes down by the lake, and nothing is happening, right? It's just a bunch of like visuals that don't feel all that compelling. And then at the end, I think it was like the bottom of page 2 or 3, the writer included this little note that said, you know, in parentheses, note, I know this is really boring right now, but she's going to go to a town soon, and it's going to get really interesting, and there's like wolves and stuff, so just keep reading. I'm like, all right, I'm not saying do that for your scripts, but I thought that really reflected the tone of the, not only the tone of her writing, her voice, her style and all that, but also the tone of where the script is actually headed, because it wasn't this sobering sort of like wilderness drama. It had a lot of lighter elements to it. So infusing your voice like that, every screenwriting professor probably from the last 20 years will say, don't do that. This screenwriting is rigid, and just don't listen to that. You can totally do that and pull it off to great effect. And I'm sure Michael and Bri have a million examples too from contest winners and finalists that we've had that do exactly that, right?
Well, yeah, I think you do want voice in there, because otherwise some scripts can read like a checklist of different things characters are doing. Like, you know, yeah. Character sits at the table, character starts eating, character gets up, character goes to the door.
Right.
Don't do that. just don't do that.
Well, yeah,
don't make
it reads like a checklist of items.
Yeah.
It's a bullet list, and it kind of, you can be more compelling. And screenwriting is writing. It's not some lesser form of writing. It's actual writing. So you want to do all the things that good writing can do. Like you want to vary your sentence structure. You want to vary your paragraph lengths. You want to vary how flowery your language is being. Like you want variety in your writing.
But then again, it goes back to that balance. You don't want to get too cute with it and too flowery, because then the joke gets old after a while. You know what I mean? Like if that writer had included that type of like little breaking the fourth wall note, like every 3 pages, like that's not going to work either, right? But the fact that it was just there for that one spot, just to keep you reading, I thought was, I haven't forgotten about it. It's been 15 years. I haven't forgotten about it, you know. The rest of the script wasn't very good, I don't think, but you know. But I remember that moment. Yeah.
Joe's got a question about super titles, like supers, like writing them, writing super before.
You mean like if
how many is too many?
Like if you're in Baltimore now, it's like super Baltimore, Maryland, 2007 or something, right?
Yeah, I'd say that it really depends on context, because sometimes you'll see writers and they'll put too much information in them. So it is a balancing act, but
I think it's a subjective choice, and I think it really depends on the style. It's a stylistic choice, and it really depends on kind of the visual, the look and feel of what you want for the script.
Yeah.
But again, sparingly probably is the best way. Yeah.
We've got a couple questions about the slow burn that wanted to go a little further with it. Readers seem to want that shock and action on page 1, but what other elements keep you reading if it's a slower paced start and more of a slow burn?
Well, it could be slow burn and still be compelling writing, in my opinion.
Bri's script is an example, right?
I was like, well, yeah. I mean, it's like you're opening up on a guy talking to an audience. That's not exactly a dude getting killed, or you know, it's just make it visually interesting is the most important thing. It's like even Manchester by the Sea, same thing. It's like they start with a really slow burn, but it's like got a really compelling opening image. Like you kind of get the tone, the theme. It's like keep the audience like if nothing else, give the audience a mystery, like a question that they need answered from those first few pages. Even if it's a slow burn, it doesn't have to be like, oh, we're doing a car chase. You know what I mean?
There's something, again, like I mentioned with Bri's first page that we looked at when we started. There's something to be said about that dynamic of that like sort of yin-yang balance of like take us to this location and then balance it with this other location, right? Like Bri's first act, which we didn't review, now all of a sudden we're in the Bronx in the middle of summer and it's 100 degrees out and it's like this completely different environment, right? And it just feels like hot and sweaty, right? It's just, you constantly, and you do this with, I think, really all your scripts that I've read, you kind of mix it up. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but
no, I do.
It does create a certain, it creates a certain dynamic flow to it, because most of your scripts aren't like these big, you know, set pieces and action and comedy and sprawling drama, right? They're all kind of slow burns, but it works. And for those of you who have seen Coda, I went into Coda not knowing really anything about, you know, what the film was about. And the first scene, if I'm not mistaken, I just saw it, I should know, or the first shot rather, is that fishing boat out into the open sea, and it shows shots of the whole morning fishing routine of them. And then they have this conversation at the docks and the pier there, and then we have the scene with, I think, with them at home. I think a lot of writers too would open a script like that with like, you know, she wakes up in the morning and her mother comes in and we find out the mother's death, and she goes downstairs and has breakfast and they're all talking around the kitchen table, and that's really boring, right? But she opened this family drama with a little bit of like, I don't say action, but it's a little bit of, you know, it's a stark visual that I actually wasn't expecting. And again, it goes back to that sort of like that mixing of environments, I guess.
Before we keep going with some questions, I want to hear some of the stuff that you guys had jotted down before we started that you wanted to make sure we covered. So Bri, like what are some of the things that, you know, are important to you in the opening pages that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I know we talked about the visuals already. I guess the other thing that you got to know about readers is that we have very short attention spans. We just do. It's like a lot of the time. So when you're trying to do in those first 5 pages, really try and keep us engaged. Like keep those dopamine hits coming, because that's going to help you in the long run really get your reader into the script and makes the read so much easier once you're there.
Like you think about like they're trying to get their bearings of where they are, who these people are, all of that. So like it's easy to get their minds to just kind of wander off if you're not keeping them engaged. Yeah.
Because like, and also we're also usually, as readers, are reading the hundreds, thousands of scripts. So it's like, so just know we've seen it all. The other thing that you got to know is really try and differentiate your opening. So like if you're going to have a character waking up, get something fresh and unique about that. Like don't just have them get out of bed. Oh, the alarm clock goes off. Oh, I'm late for work. It's because we've read literally thousands of those. So it's like just give it that extra something special is what I would say.
Isn't it amazing that I'm sure when you were in film school, when Michael was in film school, definitely when I was in film school many years ago, they would tell you, like, one of the first things they would tell you in like a beginning screenwriting class is like, don't do this, this, and this. Don't open your script with X, Y, and Z. And one of them was alarm clock openings. And everyone said, don't open your script with alarm clock openings. Every book you read says that. And I'm like, even back then, I was like, who opens their script with like an alarm clock opening where someone's waking up to start the day? And they still do it constantly. And it's very rare to find a script that opens that way that doesn't feel just hollow, right?
Yeah, I think you need to find some angle, but it's been done.
Yeah,
it's not just that either. It's like the another thing that we'll see a lot of the time, like for a script that's dealing with like a military veteran or even just someone in the military, they start in a Humvee and all the troops are ribbing on each other and then they get blown up. Do you know how many times we've seen that? A lot. Yeah. So it's like, so just do something a little bit different.
Surprise us.
Surprise us. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Something interesting. Give us a compelling mystery. Just do something that feels a little bit unique. Ideally, something that, you know, comes from you as a writer that only you can do. Something that comes from your voice that's unique to you. That's the strongest openings in my opinion. Or something that the writer only this writer could have done this opening.
Matt, what were some of the things that you were wanting the world to know about the opening pages that you didn't say when we were on break that you weren't?
Oh, I said it all when we were on break. I'm sorry. So you'll have to tune into the behind the scenes special. Town Hall.
There's a recording.
I don't think I said anything that was that we haven't already kind of addressed. I don't open it like the Coda example and like Bri's script example. Just those little nuances that you can put in the opening can really help. You know, easing us into the world, if you think of it that way. Whether you're writing for film or TV, don't open right away like in a scene where everyone's in the cafe having a conversation. You can kind of do an establishing shot or something that kind of like allows us to sort of walk into the script, so to speak. I've said that to writers before, and they say like, "Well, that's the director's job," or "That's like they'll add all that later." And it's like, no, this is the script. Like you have to paint as much of a visual picture as you can. It can't just be this like bare bones blueprint of what the movie can be. It has to be like the movie,
Yeah, and you're like, I mean, the first person you write for is the reader, and you want to make it enjoyable for them so that they keep turning the page, or it's never get any farther than that.
I did have one bullet too that I didn't touch upon yet. And I see this so much. It's when writers introduce way too many characters in the first 2 pages.
Yeah, that's another one.
Stop doing that.
We have a tendency to have like maybe 3 or 4 in the opening pages.
Right. And look, I've read scripts.
And if you've got 5, they better be like knockout introductions. So I'll remember that type thing.
I've read scripts that pull it off really well. And by the way, when I say don't introduce a bunch of characters, I don't mean like don't open at a rock concert. I mean like characters that are going to be a part of the script where they have names and ages and stuff, right? It just gets very, very confusing,
Yeah.
The Godfather is an ensemble, to really go back to an old script. The Godfather is an ensemble cast. There's many characters, but the very first shot is just of Don Corleone, right? And he's alone in the room talking to somebody.
Some dude.
Seen the movie 47,000 times.
Yeah, for an ensemble, it's like you can use different scenes to introduce different characters in your ensemble. They don't all have to be introduced in the exact same scene right at the front.
But if they are, then one thing that you can do, like, for example, your script revolves around a character's death, and so the first scene has to be a funeral. If all the characters are in the scene, then yeah, it's kind of unavoidable. But what you can do is kind of double up on introductions, where you basically just kind of say who's in the scene and give it a little aside, like, don't worry, we'll meet them all properly later on. And then you can space out the instructions later on as the script progresses.
Yeah. I like it too. That goes back to like the little stylistic flourishes that you can put in.
Don't worry, she's going down soon. Yeah,
like later on, when sometimes you'll read a character that we've met in the beginning comes back later, and the writer will be like, we met him in the beginning, just go back and read about him, if you want to put a little break the fourth wall comedic thing in there too.
Oh, well, speaking of a lot of characters, I have an ensemble pilot, and about half of them I've specified race, ethnicity, but for some I haven't. Truth be told, I don't know enough about those characters yet. Can I leave them unspecified?
All right, that was the language.
Although what I would say is like since a lot of readers do default to white, even though they shouldn't, they do. It's like you can literally say unspecified, so it's or open casting or something like that. So it's like it can be almost
any ethnicity, yeah.
So it's like at the very least, your mind or the reader's mind is not defaulting to one race in particular.
But then what do you do about gender? Let's say a character, could be any gender. How do you write that?
Is it a good character?
Is it a
I don't know, because like, is it a good character? Because like, maybe if you're writing a script and there's a waiter in the scene, I don't care if it's a male or female, right?
No, I mean like the actual lead. Like let's say John Wick. You're writing John Wick.
Yeah,
and it's
that's a little tougher because I think, well, I've been playing a lot of Metroid.
From what I said before.
I've been playing a lot of Metroid recently, which is a video game, and the lead character is Samus, who's wearing this full body armor. You don't see their face for the entire first game, and eventually the character is revealed to be female, like the sequel or something like that. And so that is interesting though, if there's
that game.
yeah. But it sort of is interesting to think of a character where the race truly doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Race or gender or anything, right? Like,
yeah. I don't really know how you'd handle that. But I think the question is about ethnicity, and that's a little bit, at least that is a clear answer where you could just say, you know, it could be any ethnicity, people wouldn't really bat an eye.
Right.
But I do feel a little bit hesitant to just have a main character where you don't know their gender.
Well, that's the question then. If you're
tough.
going to specify the gender, why wouldn't you specify? And again, I know I'm arguing against myself from what I said before, but why wouldn't you specify the ethnicity?
I don't know. That's a tough question.
It's tough questions on the Symposium Town Hall.
And in this question, I think she was saying that she's still learning her characters. Like, you know, she's writing. And so she doesn't have anything in her mind yet. Like she's maybe
by even for yourself, you can leave it as unspecified and come back to it. It's like once you get to know your characters a little bit better.
Yeah. And there was another question. As a Japanese American writer, I'm writing a feature with a protagonist who is Japanese American and a baby boomer, but there seems to be a shortage of known actors who match that. So should
if a casting director says they can't find somebody of a certain race or a certain age, they are lying. They're lazy. It's like
they're doing that job. Yeah,
they're out there. They're out
paid to find that person.
And maybe the examples that you gave are the only ones that are known because those are there's not enough roles. So maybe your script is going to be a role that's going to discover a new talent.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, I'd say they don't shoot for A-list all the time, because I'm sure there's a ton of actors on TV, like just watch Law and Order. There's a million actors who they have every week. And I'm sure that there's definitely actors working in New York and LA who would fit that description.
Right.
At least somewhere.
Yeah. Is it cool to have the first 5 pages to be a snapshot of what the full film will be about, like, with an example of American Pie?
How did American Pie open again? I haven't seen that in a while.
It's Don Corleone talking to somebody in his office.
Eating pie? I don't know. I don't remember how it opened.
So do you mean like kind of like a teaser for the film to come? Like, or like, is that what that means?
Or
yeah, Carl, explain.
I don't think that's the explanation. I don't think that was it.
And the parents interrupted him.
See, that's a great opening scene. Yeah,
that's a great opening scene, though.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is that should it be a snapshot of like what the tone and sort of the goal, and I guess not the goal. The goal is completed in that scene, essentially.
But I think that's the perfect opening scene.
In other words,
So it's kind of like it tells you like what the tone is. It's crude, it's funny, it's hilarious, right?
Yeah, it's like in terms of that, it's like, yeah, your first 5 pages should kind of be a snapshot of what you're going to get into if you're establishing the tone and whatnot.
And fun note, I actually interviewed Chris Salvatierra, who's over at HBO. I think he's still there. He was the reader who discovered American Pie. Oh. And he was telling me that when he had to present it to his boss, and it was even raunchier, like the script than what you saw on screen. And he had to present it to his boss, who was a female. He was, it was like, is this going to offend her? Like whatever. But he loved the writing and the voice of that so much that he fought and championed for it. So, and this writer just went for it, and they dialed it back, more. But just,
that's also a good lesson. You can always dial it back. You can never really, if you're holding yourself back, then you can never, don't hold yourself back. Just, go full tilt if you're going to go full tilt.
Well, we just read a script, and I was every 2 pages, it felt like, because I was, comedy's tough with me because I don't really like most comedies because, I don't know, I'm a humorless, stone-hearted person. But I was reading a comedy feature, and it was so good, I kept screenshotting it to Michael, and I'm like, this is funny, right? And it was
hilarious. It was really, really good.
Yeah, it was completely over the top, and I'm like, no, who will ever make this movie? And at the end of it, I'm like, I still have no idea who's gonna make this movie. It's wonderful. And like, you kind of have, regardless of the genre, you have to kind of hit that zone. It's almost like a what did I just read sort of thing, because it's going to get that person excited to pass it along, right? Or to contact the writer if you're.
Well, as I said earlier, surprise us. Like, that script surprised you on every page, and that's a good thing to have.
And it was the first page had like 3 great jokes on it, and
all of them landed.
5 pages had 20 great jokes. You kind of have to front load a script with all your bells and whistles and tricks in a way, even if it's a slow burn too, right? Like we talked about before. So
I'm gonna save one question till later, the one about ideas. How much detail is advisable for sex scenes? For example, if it's a montage or different couples, do you put Emily and Jack make love, Derek and Stacy are fucking, or does it need to be more detail?
Now the Symposium's gone from a PG-13 to an R. Thank you.
Apparently.
Where can I now this?
Well, it depends. It's kind of like, it's sort of case by case. How much detail do you really need? It's like, if it's like don't go all the way to the room, but I mean, where you have like an hour-long sex scene with Tommy Wiseau, but it's like, again, it's kind of like use your best judgment. And like, especially with the one situation that I would say less is more would be an unconsensual sex scene. It's like, just you don't need to go super into detail with that, just because there's really no need to be traumatizing or re-traumatize the viewer in case someone has experienced that. It's like, just, you really only need to hint at it that it's happening. You don't need a whole lot more than that. At least
I think just in general, less is more. I think just any sex scene, like, hot and heavy, slow and passionate, just whatever it might be, just hit those adjectives and just leave it briefer, because basically if it's ever going to be filmed, you're going to have actors who, there will be an intimacy coordinator, there will be contracts depicting like what they will show on screen and what they won't. One actor might agree to do something, another actor might say no way. So I think just focus on like the emotional and just like the feel of the scene, and don't go into the explicit details, because otherwise some actors are going to be reading this and saying, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. And that's kind of, you've just lost an actress if that's the case.
That's a good point. Touch upon the main emotions of the scene as it's portrayed. You don't have to, get detailed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with novel writing, unless you're writing erotica. Like, it's about the emotion of that intimate scene more than anything else. Is she cold and distant while he's really passionate? Like, it's, so that you get a feel for what their relationship is.
Well, that's a good question too. Would you really have a sex scene in the first 5 pages? How can you be shocked?
It depends.
How many scripts I read?
Actually, every gay pilot now starts with a sex scene.
Pretty much.
Like every gay dramedy nowadays starts with a sex scene, and it's kind of funny.
Nuts too. It's like
I do
every single one.
I do for one of mine, but it establishes perfectly in 1 page the relationship between those 2 people, and it happens to be a sex scene, but it says it all about them and their relationship.
Yeah.
So it can be
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not
trust your gut, right?
Right. Colin says, I got feedback on one script from a contest that my cold open was too active/action oriented compared to the rest of the script. The pace did change a little from cold open to act 1 and later. How do you feel about pacing and tone shift?
I'll take the tone side of things. If that's one thing I like to see a consistency of throughout is the tone. Like if Bri had that kind of an opening and it kept that pace for, like the next 5-10 pages, and then all of a sudden it's a goofball comedy. It's like, that's hard to pull off without it feeling jarring, right? That's the negative side of like, what the hell am I reading? But with, the question went away. Let me go, well, whatever.
Oh, it's under answer. Do you want me to pull it back up?
Yeah, if you can. I didn't even know my dog was home.
I'll read it again. I got feedback on one script from a contest that my cold open was too active/action oriented compared to the rest of the script.
I don't know what too active, action orientated, why that would be even a note. Hopefully I think it's from our contest.
As it compared to the rest of the script, that
Well,
was different than the rest.
I guess my question would be for
Did I
you.
get that right,
It's like,
Colin?
did you feel the need to up the action and all of that for those first like 5-10 pages to hook the reader, and then you changed it more to a slow burn throughout the rest of the script? I guess that would be my question. Is that kind of what the reader was responding to, or was it that?
I was wondering if it's a
well, he's
pilot or
not here.
feature
He's got to
because
type it in.
Colin said no,
Yeah,
because there
Was
was
there
at
at
least
least 2 other fight scenes in the
2
show?
other fight scenes in the show.
Oh, well then
And
the
I
reader just didn't get
I
it.
have no idea on that one.
that might just be a bad note, honestly.
That happens.
Bad note-
That sometimes
Watch-
happens, yeah.
Watch them drop, and then Magda read my script. It's one of our readers. I'm like, I'm sure there was a good reason. No.
Gotta go talk to them.
Yeah,
It might mean
I think-
that maybe the first scene was too action oriented, and then
Okay.
there might have been like a long time before the next scene, maybe. But I don't know. It's hard.
But that's a
It's
good.
hard to say without reading the script.
That's a good question though, because there should be a tonal, I think overall at least a tonal consistency, from that opening throughout the rest of your script, because the whole point of the opening is to really establish all those different things, I think,
Mhm.
with exceptions, of course, right?
Sorkin in Chicago 7 has multiple characters, each contribute to a piece of dialogue. That must have been when we were talking about ensemble.
Oh yeah.
But also that is Aaron Sorkin. He is established, and the Chicago 7 is a script that is well into his career. So I'm sure he was able to do something different to someone who was.
And also his dialogue has a nice rhythm to it, just his voice. Just watching Chicago 7, watching Social Network. I haven't seen Being the Ricardos yet, but yeah, I don't know. I think that it worked well in Chicago 7 for the most part, and I thought it worked great in Social Network. That's just part of the style. And I'd say that if you are having a lot of characters contribute to dialogue in the first scene, just give them a defining moment pretty early on after that, just so we can orient ourselves with the characters.
Spike wrote an article too for Pipeline Artists about naming your character, or there was a section in that article about naming your characters and how you shouldn't, like, this character's name is John, and this one's Jill, and this one's Jack, and this one's Jeremy. And it's like they all sound the same. And it's like, well, you can name your characters whatever you want, but at the same time, like, unless they need to have names that sound really, really similar, like, don't do that either, because it's going to muddle the read. If this
Well, that's the other thing about the Chicago 7 is that there's a bunch of characters, so we kind of can categorize them just visually from early on. Like, you have Sacha Baron Cohen and Jeremy Strong, who are the hippie types. Then you have who else is in the movie? I can't even remember, but they're more clean cut, right? So just visually speaking, we can already kind of put them into little corners in our mind when we're watching and reading the script.
You can absolutely use character contrast in order to introduce characters, like especially multiple in a scene. It's like, oh yeah, you've got like what Mike said, where it's like, oh, some of them are more hippie, some of them are more clean cut, and it's like, and that's just a good way for you to vary up your character introductions too, just by contrasting with the other people in the scene.
Yeah, like I always makes me crazy when all the characters have like the same first initial, like first letter of their name.
Yeah.
But then there's, unless it's something like everybody knows that family who names their kid like Michael, Michelle, Melissa, Mark.
That's my sister's name. My sister's
Right, like
Melissa, so.
Right, but that's a characteristic of that family. So then that makes sense if you're, if it's something to do with you're trying to show something about the family.
There's also basic names too, like
again,
naming every character John, Dave, Jim. Like, even if they don't have the same name, Nick, like there's a lot of basic names in America that a million people have, and they're all 4 letters long, and we will confuse all the characters throughout the script at some point if they're all just basic names.
Picking names are tough for characters too. I fully admit, as someone who's used to think they wanted to be a screenwriter and who's written many screenplays and books and short stories and stuff, it's kind of the hardest thing is trying to figure out the names of your characters, right? Because even like naming someone something as simple as Nick, you already
Megan's
have like
running out of letters.
What's that?
Megan said she's running out of letters.
You gotta start going to the Greek alphabet and calling them symbols.
Yeah, there's like somebody mentioned there's baby naming sites, and one of the things I do, I went to
Yeah.
Cornell and we have a big directory. Sometimes I would go in there and just open it up and stick my finger in it until I found a name that was interesting, or sometimes
Yes,
I'd
use your high school yearbook, right?
Yeah, and
use your high school yearbook.
Yeah, or I'd read the obituaries, you know, like, I mean, just anything to kind of, because sometimes there's unusual names, like names you don't think of, and names of people of different races and, you know, whatever, like that aren't in your world. There's lots of things you can, there's also name generating sites that you can, you know, kind of say the age, the sex of the person, or whatever, and hit like generate a name there. I mean, those things exist too.
Right. I used to go on behindthename.com. I don't even know if it's
I
around
still do
anymore.
that sometimes.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
depends.
there's a good one I found a while ago. I'll drop in the chat. It's a fun one.
Someone named their character Gnocchi? Wait,
That just makes me hungry. Like I think of gnocchi.
Gnocchi is spelled with a
I
G.
love
by the
gnocchi.
way.
I know it is, but I see it, and I'm Italian. I know it's spelled with a G. I've made it.
It's so good.
It is so good. It is so good.
Burgos has great ones too. In the frozen food section, they have like this sweet potato one that's actually pretty good. So I love gnocchi.
Click on the link because the chat will go away, just so you've got it still open for all you people out there.
Well, if it's Japanese,
Oh,
there
yeah.
would definitely only be one C in there for sure. If it's Gnocchi, hold on.
Oh,
Because there's no double C's in Japanese. I'm confused. Hold on. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So did I ask the theme question? Can you
Theme?
talk about theme? I know some of the classic advice is about stating the theme in the first few pages. How have you seen that done well?
As recently, again, I'll go to Bri's thing. Like, you don't really know if it's the theme or not yet, but I already know like what the series is about because she's talked about it, and
Yeah.
it's kind of stated, sort of, at least in that.
I mean, it is. It's like the theme real
Mhm.
change is a big theme in the show.
Right.
So it's like it's kind of yeah. Then the river imagery comes back. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
you know, I was watching Jurassic Park recently, and I think from the opening image that does establish the theme pretty well, because the first thing you see in Jurassic Park is leaves on a tree rustling, and then you cut away from that and you see the Jurassic Park employees. They're all standing with guns, rifles, and they're all nervous. They're waiting, and the trees keep moving, and then suddenly out comes a forklift, right? And it's carrying a cage with a dinosaur in it, but already we're expecting this wild animal to come out of the forest, but instead we get machines, and that's kind of the theme right from the opening image, where the threat is the dinosaurs, but it's also technology. It's also just science, right?
Mm.
How do you feel
I'm
about
sorry.
starting in dream sequences, like a dream sequence in a cold open that highlights the absence of a character? For example, my character's husband dies before the story starts. The cold open is her dreaming of him and then waking to a cold and empty side of the bed. Is that impactful, or should I shy away from a dream sequence?
I wouldn't shy away from a dream sequence necessarily, but what I would do with that particular opening is find some sort of twist with that, because I've definitely seen that opening before quite a bit, where it's like, oh, a character has died and then they wake up and then that character is no longer there and it is a dream. So I kind of have seen that opening multiple times, but again, just make it really unique to your characters. Like, don't necessarily do like if you're dreaming about the husband, oh, they're walking in a park, or oh, they're whatever. It's like really make it unique to that couple if you're going to do a dream sequence. At least that's what I would say.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree.
I think
Okay.
Kristen's question is even kind of similar, right?
Yeah. Is it a bad idea to switch back and forth between past and present in a cold open? I'd like to establish how the character ended up in her present situation by showing the catalyst for the situation using short scenes.
That's fine. I'm trying to
That's
think of it. I feel like I just saw like a show that the first episode did that.
I'd say the one thing to be aware of is pacing, though, because you could, if you're cutting back too much, then it could be kind of whiplash between the two different time periods. But
Actually,
I think
that's a good point. That's
Yeah.
the one thing I wanted to say. Like, one of my top 3 suggestions on the opening pages is to allow us to get, or maybe I already said this, allow us to get our footing in the world, right? If you hit us with like a quick scene and then this scene and we introduce this character and another character, you've already lost us, right? As the reader. Just kind of ease us into the world. Even if it's an action scene, you can still kind of ease us in there. right? And then hit us with that, whatever that moment is.
Well, I think James Bond movies do that pretty well, where you do have this action-packed sequence to start every James Bond movie, but
Yeah.
you do have a way to ease in there, I think. Sometimes like that kinetic action opening is the right way to start. Like I think Mad Max, the new one, kind of had that opening where it just action right from the start. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That feels intentional. There's like an intentionality behind it where they really did say this is an action-packed movie. This is just a movie comprised entirely of action scenes and set pieces. So it really did make sense to open the movie and just, I think it opens with a car chase, like it 3 frames after it starts.
No, it starts with the car on the sand dune with Max in front of it, and then he eats the lizard, and then the cars come by, if I recall correctly.
Such a great movie. I love it.
I love that movie too. It's so good.
What you're talking about? Fury Road.
Mm-hmm.
Fury Road, it's so good.
I didn't care for it. So
Get out here. Leave.
Center. I just want to cause
like
trouble.
the first 5 pages. Like
the first 5 pages were excellent.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question that I've been purposely hanging on for because it actually is like a whole other conversation, but it's an important one. How do you know that an idea is dead and not worth pursuing? Or that you shouldn't even have pursued it in the first place?
If you don't want to write it anymore.
If you lost a passion for it, then it's kind of dead.
If it's dead for you, it's definitely going to be dead for the reader.
Yeah, and it's not worth your time. I think also a Pipeline Artist article, I think Teresa or someone wrote it about the sunk cost fallacy, and like, well, I've already invested all this time into the script. I'll just try and force my way through it. Don't do that. I mean, don't delete it, from your memory altogether, but like put it aside and just start something new. Once you've lost faith in an idea, that excitement is not going to show on the page, right? And then you're kind of screwed. Then what are you going to do? Because it's going to show.
It's like, I've definitely given up on stuff for sure. There's plenty of like, I've gotten an actor. I've actually gotten almost through like the 3rd act of a script, and I was still just like, no, this whole thing doesn't work. And then I stopped. It's like that happens. I mean, it happens. It just does.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess there also is a flip side of that where you are so passionate about an idea and it's just not coming together, and you've written 3, 4, 5, 6 drafts of it. And it's kind of a tougher conversation that you have to have with yourself if you are still passionate with an idea and it's just not coming together. I guess, the solution there is to just move on to a different concept and write something else, and maybe you'll come back to the script later and find a way that you learn something else with the new script and you can bring it to the script that you kind of are struggling with. But
right. In fact, since we are talking about first 5 pages, some of you might do this, or maybe this is bad advice, I don't know. I really like the idea of writing out whatever your first scene or your first sequence is, and then waiting a second, maybe getting notes just on that, and then going back and really revising it until it's like, okay, now I think it's really working well. And then that gives you such a great foundation to build from, rather than just writing like, all right, I'll revisit it later, because the things that you write after that that might be not only based on that in terms of the narrative, but based on that in terms of like the style or the tone that you want to establish for the piece could be affected. That's not everybody's style, but I know that that's worked for me in the past.
I'd also add to that though, when you do that, to always be prepared for that scene to go away, to like, that by the time you finish it, you may decide that scene isn't the scene I want to open with, and maybe that scene is going to be moved somewhere else, and maybe it's just going to be completely cut. But that it got in your head so that you could set the tone for the story for yourself and get you excited to get writing the rest of it, that it served its purpose. Just be flexible enough to know that you may love it, but it may not be the one that ends up in the final draft.
Right.
There have been plenty of times where I've had to kill like some of my favorite scenes in a script, but just because they didn't work with the new outline, or they didn't, it's like even though it's like, oh, it was like one of the best scenes I'd written that day. It's like, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So.
I take all those and I save them. And then there was one script that turned into a limited series that I was able to pull them back because I could write more. But like but it just makes me feel better to save them, even if I never look at them again.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it in a separate file. Like I have a separate file, just
Mm.
copy paste or cut paste, I guess. Just
My-
take it out
my
and
darling file.
yeah, the graveyard.
Yeah.
Uh,
So we don't have any open questions.
There was
We have
one
one in
that
the
just
chat
dropped in the
about
chat,
fade
yeah.
in. Just wondering if you still begin your scripts with fade in. I watched a webinar yesterday where the panelists agreed it was old school and not necessary. I wouldn't mind saving a few lines, but what are your thoughts? My thoughts are,
but go ahead.
my thoughts are, if you imagine the script starting with a fade in, then put it in. If you don't, then don't. I don't notice whether the script has fade in or not. Honestly, I've read
It's like
so many scripts this year. I haven't noticed. Yeah.
Don't just get rid of the fade in. No one cares about that. Unless it's like, see, there's a variation to everything. Unless it's like you really want to enter a scene slowly and highlight that, then over black, then we fade into whatever it is. Otherwise, just leave it out. It's a line.
Yeah, I will say sometimes fade in is wrong for a script. Like, for example, Mad Max.
Yeah,
you don't want to fade up.
Everyone but Matt, who has joy, likes it. But
yeah, that's a good point.
Mad Max, they cut in. It's just a hard cut. He's, as someone said, standing in front of the car, right? That doesn't get a fade in because that would be totally out of place in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And you can play around with it too. It could be, you start over black and then it just snaps to like some stark image, or it, whatever, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be faded specifically, but I do advocate starting the script visually in some way, just related to that.
So what about stuff like bolding slug lines and, everybody's.
I like the bold
cares?
slug line, bold underline slug lines.
I used to do them. I used to do bolded slug lines. You'd actually see them on one of my older pilots. It's like, it really depends. I mean, it's totally personal preference.
So what made you
I don't think anybody
stop?
Wait, sorry, what?
What made you stop doing it?
I don't even know what made me stop doing it. I think it was just, it worked with that pilot because I think it was because there were a lot of locations within the same, like it was in a school. So there were a lot of locations kind of in the same spot. So it's like, for whatever reason, bolding them helped me keep track of them better in that particular pilot, but then I just kind of stopped. So it's personal preference. I don't think anybody's really gonna hate you for it if you do it.
Yeah, no one cares. Like I do both. I bold and underline. It's nice. I like it visually. It just separates things.
Right.
Was this whole topic a screenwriting Twitter drama at some point?
I think it was. I think it actually was.
For
Yeah.
me,
Twitter drama is the
went
dumbest shit imaginable. Like it's just so stupid.
Yep, it was drama.
Yeah, it's just so stupid. Like, you also get the things where someone chimes in every now and says, never use we in a screenplay. Never say we see. It's
I
like,
do.
okay,
I use
well,
we all the time. Like
I do too.
I use it all the time.
Don't use it for every sentence, but if that's something that hangs you up as a reader, then you just kind of need to get over yourself, in my opinion.
You could say the most objective stuff and someone will have a problem with it.
Yeah, there's another one a while ago.
Let's just say the last 5 minutes of every town hall to talk about Twitter.
we can gossip about Twitter.
He says, don't be an asshole because showrunners won't want to hire you. And suddenly that becomes a whole topic of debate because that became drama. It's great advice. Don't be an asshole.
So we have a good comment in here from Ruth, actually. Best opening you've ever read.
Oh.
Best opening.
Oh, gee.
What
I'm thinking, scrolling back through our.
I'm thinking it's like there are definitely some contest scripts that I would put up there for like some of the best.
I don't remember.
Well, I mean, that's something we've read.
Yeah,
remember lots of scripts we've read for a contest that we love, but
Cinderella Must Die. Remember how that started? It was just like this bold sort of like, what am I reading kind of thing.
Oh, that's one of the scripts I basically read.
Pilot does have a pretty great opening. I mean, it's like that's still one that sticks with me.
Yeah,
it's for sure.
Yeah.
She said
Cinderella Must Die was one of the scripts that I basically read page 1. I sent to Matt immediately because the page 1 was so good. I said, you have to read this now.
That was Esteban's pilot, right?
Oh yeah, was that X? Oh, I loved X. That was so good.
Is that what you mean, or it was a different script? Yeah.
Oh,
you're talking about X, or you're talking about different?
I would have sent it to him on page 1. That pilot was fantastic.
Yeah, there's a few that I've done that just because the voice is just so undeniable. And
right. There's no better feeling than when you read a great like first scene or first couple pages, because then we all like, we send it to each other. We're like, look at this.
Oh, we're in good hands. Like I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
like, make sure the reader knows that you're in good hands.
Right.
I think scripts has been produced though. Raiders of the Lost Ark is kind of an undeniable opening scene. Because basically, you know, you start with the Paramount logo and then it fades away and it's replaced by a silhouette of a mountain. Indiana Jones steps into frame and we're kind of following him through the jungle with the rest of the expedition. It's kind of like we're getting this fun vibe, we're getting this fun tone, adventure, all that. And then he goes into the temple, he steals the relic, and then suddenly the temple starts attacking him. It's just such a great fun sequence.
Mm.
I think George Lucas in general is just pretty good with that. Between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars, they both start off very fun and kinetic and visual.
What happened to those directors? I don't even know. They
Directors?
just disappeared. Spielberg and what was the other guy?
Spielberg and Lucas, yeah.
What really did In the Heights this year? Like, what are you talking
I
about?
guess they know what they're doing. Those hacks, Colin says.
Those hacks, yeah. George Lucas sells Star Wars for $10 billion whatever dollars.
Yeah, however many
Right.
billions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. Hack.
Like built a franchise that's multi-billion-dollar franchise. Yeah, total hack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What should we take one more question? One more
Probably
random
should.
question about the opening of a script or a story.
If someone has one, yes.
Like I would love to see if someone else is like, this is your chance, guys. Last chance.
You have 10
Last
seconds.
call.
We can wait a minute and see. Was there anything else on your list, Michael and Bri, that you wanted to touch upon?
I kind of put it all in there at some point.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, a lot of
the big
stuff
thing
that I
was
got-
opening images.
Yeah, my
Films
name
are
is-
visual,
Yeah, I
your
guess-
writing should be visual too.
The biggest
wow.
takeaway, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say the biggest takeaway is just you have to establish right away, at the bare minimum, your voice and your style, and I think the tone of the piece. It could be a girl walking through the forest or something. As long as it's engaging in some way. It doesn't have to
Visual.
be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be this explosion and like flying sharks or anything. It just has to feel visual and cinematic. And
Why does the movie not play? I guess is a good question for the opening scenes.
Yeah. So Jeanne,
And while we're
Make sure you're
waiting,
making interesting choices.
yeah.
All that.
yeah, while we're waiting to see if anyone has a question. Oh, there is one.
Yeah.
And then I'll get to what I was going to say later. How late can you introduce the main character?
That's a good question.
That is like I
would
think
say
about
within
Fargo
the
right
first-
now. Like
Well, I
the first thing that comes to mind is Fargo, I guess. Because Fargo basically they have that opening sequence with William H. Macy and the robbers or the kidnappers. And I don't think that Frances McDormand appears in the movie until like the half-hour mark or right around there. So I guess you can push it a little late, but
Hitchcock, I mean,
Yes,
in Psycho, the
it's
main
harder.
character switches halfway through. So it's like, it really just kind of depends on what story you're telling. It's like, a nice rule of thumb is within like the first 10 somewhere, but if you're not introducing your main character right away, it's like, or if it's an ensemble, like say you don't have a main character, it's like, just really establish like your theme first. If you haven't introduced your main character, kind of still give us an idea of what we're getting into, and even if we don't necessarily know our perspective yet.
I will say with Fargo,
Yeah.
like with Fargo, you know, the first half hour is basically this kidnapping plot with these criminals and all that, and all that really does affect Marge when she finally appears, when Frances McDormand finally comes on scene. So if you are introducing your character late, then I think that you really do need to make clear that that's kind of the inciting incident for the character, that all this stuff that we've seen in the first 10, 20, 30 pages really does impact their journey in some way.
Sense?
Yes.
So this
No problem.
This was great, and I hope that everybody learned a ton. And I just want to mention that next Wednesday, the 16th,
Yeah.
we have another symposium coming up, building a kick-ass pitch deck and series Bible. So that one, you can find the link to register for that on symposium.pipelineartist.com. And if you've got, also too, if you're here and you did not give us your email address when you registered with Zoom, we can't email you the recording. So if for some reason you chose not to give us the email address, you can email me and Ruth at symposium@pipelineartist.com. That's the email address, right? I just had like a gone.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yes.
Also,
At pipelineartist.com. And yeah, Ruth just chimed in. Thank you, Ruth. And that way you'll be sure to get it. And I think we're done. So now
I wanted to give everyone a free symposium mug or something, but there's a lot of people. I'm not gonna do this. I'll next time though.
Okay.
For the next one,
Free gift, you don't get it. Oprah
I'll
said,
do a
check your
Twitter
receipts, there's
giveaway
nothing there.
tomorrow. I'll do a mug giveaway tomorrow during, not tomorrow, next week during Pipeline Riders or something. But yeah, thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And we'll send you the recording in the next couple days, or it's Friday, so probably early next week we'll have it for you.
Yeah.
Have a great night, everybody.
Okay.
So,
Good night.
polish those first 5.
All right.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.